There is a terrifying misconception about torture. We are conditioned by history and cinema to believe that the ultimate test of human endurance is physical pain. We think that if a hero can simply grit their teeth, endure the blade, survive the starvation, and refuse to speak, they have won. We treat the human body as the final battleground. But physical torture has a biological limit. The body eventually goes into shock. The nervous system shuts down to protect itself. Ultimately, the heart stops, and the pain ends. Death, in the face of physical agony, becomes a profound mercy. But what happens when a god decides to bypass your body and torture your mind instead? What happens when the architect of your suffering doesn't want you to die, but desperately needs you to live, so you can watch everything you have ever loved be systematically eradicated? Today, we are looking at the darkest, most psychologically devastating narrative in J.R.R. Tolkien's entire legendarium. This is the tragedy of Húrin Thalion. This is not a story of swords and epic battles. It is a clinical, unforgiving deconstruction of weaponized hopelessness, cosmic gaslighting, and the absolute destruction of the human ego. To understand the sheer scale of Hurin's collapse, we must first look at who he was before the darkness took him. Hurin was not just a soldier. He was the greatest warrior of men in the first age of Middle-earth. During the Nirnaeth Arnoediad, the apocalyptic Battle of Unnumbered Tears, the alliance of elves and men was utterly shattered. Morgoth's forces surrounded them. Treachery broke their lines. As his allies were slaughtered and the world quite literally burned around him, Hurin did not retreat. He stood alone to cover the escape of the elven king Turgon. The texts say Hurin swung his great axe 70 times. He fought until the black blood of trolls melted the very blade of his weapon, and with every single swing, he screamed, "Day shall come again!" He was captured alive by the Dark Lord Morgoth. He was dragged beneath the earth, into the suffocating, ash-choked pits of Angband. And when he was thrown before the Dark Throne, facing the literal incarnation of evil, Hurin did not beg. He did not break. He mocked Morgoth to his face. He possessed what we would call an unbreakable, defiant will. And that defiance was his greatest mistake. Morgoth was not a mindless beast. He was a being of supreme, sociopathic intelligence. He looked at Hurin and realized instantly that physical torture would be entirely useless. You cannot break a fanatic by hurting his body. Hurin would simply welcome death as a martyr. So, Morgoth decided to attack the only vulnerability Hurin had left: his family, his legacy, his hope. Morgoth cursed Hurin's bloodline. But a curse requires an audience to be truly effective. Morgoth dragged Hurin out of the dungeons and took him to the highest, most desolate peak of Thangorodrim. He bound Hurin to a stone chair using supernatural chains, and then he cursed Hurin with a horrifying gift: supernatural sight and hearing. He commanded Hurin to sit paralyzed on that freezing mountain and watch the doom of his wife and his children unfold. In clinical psychology, there is a term called vicarious trauma. It is the profound, permanent, psychological damage that occurs when a person is forced to witness the horrific suffering of others, especially their loved ones, while being completely, physically powerless to stop it. Morgoth constructed the ultimate, inescapable simulation of learned helplessness. But Morgoth did not just give Hurin a window to watch the world. He gave Hurin his own eyes. This is where the torture elevates from simple cruelty into a masterpiece of cognitive distortion and cosmic gaslighting. Hurin was not seeing objective reality. He was seeing the world filtered entirely through Morgoth's malice. This is a crucial point. When Hurin looked down upon Middle-earth, Morgoth's magic warped the context of everything he saw. Every time his son Túrin made a mistake, Morgoth's perspective made it look like a deliberate act of malice. Every stroke of bad luck looked like the inevitable, justifiable punishment for Hurin's own defiance. Imagine being paralyzed in a chair for 28 years. You cannot sleep. You cannot close your eyes. You are exposed to the freezing winds and the suffocating volcanic ash, and you are forced to watch your son, Túrin, grow up as a cursed exile. Hurin had to sit in silence and watch his son accidentally murder his best friend, Beleg Strongbow, the only person who unconditionally loved him. Hurin watched Túrin wake up, see the blood on his hands, and mentally shatter. Hurin watched his son lead the magnificent underground city of Nargothrond into absolute ruin out of sheer, arrogant pride. But Morgoth was not acting alone. He sent his greatest agent of psychological warfare, the father of dragons, Glorung, to finish the job. Glorung did to Hurin's children exactly what Morgoth was doing to Hurin. The dragon used hypnotic manipulation to erase the memory of Hurin's daughter, Niënor. Up on the mountain, Hurin watched, screaming in the silent prison of his own mind, as his son and his daughter, who had never met and did not know each other's identities, crossed paths in the wilderness. Hurin was forced to watch them fall in love. He watched them marry. He watched his daughter become pregnant with her own brother's child. Hurin knew exactly what was happening. He knew the horrifying reality of the incest, and he could not do a single thing to stop it. He could only watch as the dragon finally lifted the spell of amnesia. He watched his pregnant daughter realize she had married her brother, and he watched her throw herself off a ravine into the raging waters below. Then he watched his son, the boy he had sacrificed his freedom to protect, fall upon his own black sword in a pool of despair. And for every single second of those 28 years, Morgoth is whispering in Hurin's ear. He is constantly reinforcing the cognitive distortion. Morgoth tells him that this is all his fault. If you had just submitted, Hurin, if you had just bowed to me, if you hadn't been so proud, your children would be alive. You killed them, Hurin. Your hope killed them. Morgoth weaponized Hurin's own hope. If Hurin didn't hope for their survival, the tragedy wouldn't hurt. By forcing Hurin to care, by keeping him alive, Morgoth ensured that the grief was infinite and agonizing. If you find this kind of uncompromising, clinical breakdown of mythology fascinating, take a moment to subscribe. We explore the darkest corners of fiction on this channel, deconstructing the psychological realities behind the myths. After 28 years of unrelenting psychological crucifixion, after the entire bloodline has been extinguished in blood and horror, something unthinkable happens. Morgoth lets Hurin go. He unbinds the chains. He gives the old man a wooden staff, and he lets him walk down the mountain. Many readers mistakenly view this as a moment of pity. It is not. Morgoth does not forgive. In the realm of psychological warfare, releasing Hurin is the final brilliant stroke of a sociopath. Morgoth releases Hurin because the torture in the chair is finished. The defiant warrior who was bound to the stone is dead. What walks down that mountain is a broken vessel, perfectly shaped to hold Morgoth's poison and spread it among the free peoples of the world. Hurin thinks he is free, but his mind has been so thoroughly violated, so deeply conditioned by decades of gaslighting, that he no longer perceives the world like a rational human being. He carries Morgoth's paranoid, hateful gaze with him. Everywhere Hurin goes, he brings suspicion, bitterness, and ruin. He is a walking contagion of despair. He travels to the borders of the hidden elven kingdom of Gondolin, the very city he sacrificed his life to protect 28 years ago. He stands outside the mountains and cries out for King Turgon to let him in, but Turgon, fearing a trap, refuses. In his grief and anger, Hurin shouts Turgon's name into the wind, accidentally revealing the general location of the hidden city to Morgoth's spies. Without meaning to, Hurin dooms the very city he bled to save. He then travels to the realm of Doriath, where the elven king Thingol had tried and failed to protect Hurin's family. Hurin enters the throne room, but he does not come as a friend. He comes as a deeply traumatized, bitter old man. He throws a cursed treasure, the Noglamir, at the feet of the elven king, mockingly telling him it is payment for the good care he took of his wife and children. This single act of bitter sarcasm sets off a chain of events that eventually leads to the murder of King Thingol and the total destruction of Doriath. This is the ultimate, tragic reality of the alienated combat veteran. He returns from the enemy camp, but his own people no longer see a hero. They look at this shattered, unpredictable old man who survived the Devil's Fortress, and they wonder if he made a deal. They treat him like a spy. They treat him like a liability. The isolation is absolute. Morgoth didn't need to send an army to destroy Hurin's allies. He just needed to send Hurin. The story reaches its agonizing conclusion not on a battlefield, but in a quiet graveyard. Hurin wanders the wilderness until he finds the stone marking the resting place of his children, Túrin and Niënor. And there, sitting in the cold twilight, leaning against the cold stone, he finds his wife, Morwen. She is aged, broken, and completely unrecognizable from the proud woman he left behind. They do not share a grand, cinematic reunion. There are no swelling strings or dramatic speeches. The trauma they have both endured is far too vast for words. She looks at him, her eyes hollow, and she asks him a single question. She asks if he knows how their children died. Hurin looks at her. He carries the unbearable, graphic memory of their incest and their suicides. And in his final act of mercy, he refuses to tell her the horrifying truth. He sits with her in silence. And as the sun sets over the graveyard, Morwen dies quietly in his arms. With his wife dead, the very last anchor holding Hurin to the mortal world snaps. He has outlived his entire family. He has seen the kingdoms he fought for turn against him. He has accidentally brought ruin to his friends. His ego, his sense of self, is completely dead. Húrin Thalion, the greatest warrior of the First Age, walks to the edge of the Western Sea, and without a word, he casts himself into the dark, freezing water. Many readers interpret this suicide as a final defeat. They see it as proof that Morgoth finally broke him. But if you analyze it through the lens of trauma and pathology, Hurin's final act is not an act of cowardice. It is an act of quarantine. Standing on the shore, Hurin finally understands exactly what Morgoth has done to him. He realizes that his mind is infected. He is a carrier of Morgoth's malice, a biological weapon of despair that destroys anyone who tries to help him. By throwing himself into the sea, Hurin makes the ultimate, agonizing tactical choice. He removes the poison from Middle-earth by removing himself. Morgoth proved a terrifying, timeless truth. You do not need to break a man's bones to destroy him. You do not need to conquer his armies to defeat him. You just have to break his reality, isolate his mind, and force him to watch everything he loves burn. Day shall come again, but for Húrin Thalion, the sun had set forever.